it began with silence. Not the ordinary silence of royal discretion, but the kind that settles over palace corridors when something important has happened and no one is willing to explain it. For weeks, speculation swirled around Sophie and Edward. Separate appearances, different schedules, missed opportunities to appear together. What began as harmless curiosity soon transformed into a growing storm of questions. Then suddenly, the silence broke, and what emerged was far more complicated than anyone expected. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, the signs were subtle. In a family where public schedules are planned months in advance and every appearance is carefully documented, small changes rarely escape attention. Royal watchers began noticing that Sophie and Edward, long regarded as one of the monarchy's most dependable and united partnerships, were appearing together less frequently than usual. Individual engagements continued. Official duties remained uninterrupted. Yet something seemed different. Events that once would have featured both of them suddenly involved only one. Invitations that traditionally encouraged joint participation appeared to produce separate schedules instead. None of it seemed dramatic in isolation, but taken together, the pattern was impossible to ignore. As weeks passed, the questions multiplied. Experienced royal observers started comparing calendars, reviewing public appearances, and discussing the unusual shift in routine. Some dismissed the speculation as an overreaction. After all, senior royals often divide responsibilities to maximize efficiency. Yet others pointed out that the changes appeared unusually consistent. The Duke and Duchess had spent years presenting a remarkably stable public partnership. Their ability to work together while supporting countless charitable causes had become one of their defining strengths. That history made the sudden scheduling changes all the more noticeable. Before long, media speculation began intensifying. Reports emerged suggesting that the reduced number of joint appearances could indicate deeper issues. Some theories focused on professional disagreements. Others hinted at personal tensions. A few commentators suggested that growing responsibilities within the monarchy might be creating unexpected strain. None of these claims were supported by official evidence, but in the absence of clear explanations, speculation flourished. The silence coming from palace sources only added fuel to the growing curiosity. According to insiders, palace aides repeatedly declined opportunities to address the rumors directly. Questions were met with polite refusals. Requests for clarification produced little information. That response was hardly unusual. The royal family has long preferred discretion over public debate. Yet in this case, the lack of explanation seemed to encourage even greater interest. Every unanswered question generated another. Every rumor inspired a new theory. The narrative began developing a momentum of its own. Meanwhile, close royal observers pointed toward another possibility. Rather than focusing on conflict between Sophie and Edward themselves, they suggested that mounting pressures within the institution could be influencing events behind the scenes. The monarchy was navigating a period of transition, uncertainty, and increasing demands. Senior working royals were carrying heavier workloads. Expectations continued growing. Responsibilities expanded. Under such circumstances, even the strongest partnerships could face new challenges. If something had changed, perhaps it reflected external pressures rather than internal divisions. Throughout it all, Sophie and Edward remained silent. They continued performing official duties with professionalism and dedication. Neither publicly addressed the rumors. Neither attempted to correct the growing narrative. Their restraint, while consistent with royal tradition, created an information vacuum that others eagerly filled. The longer the silence continued, the larger the story became. What began as curiosity evolved into widespread fascination. Then came the development that changed everything. According to accounts circulating among royal watchers, the decision was eventually made to speak not necessarily through dramatic declarations or sensational revelations, but through actions and carefully considered responses that began reshaping public understanding of the situation. Suddenly, the story no longer seemed as simple as people had assumed. The rumors that dominated headlines appeared to represent only a fraction of a much larger picture. Because beneath the speculation, beneath the theories, and beneath the questions that had consumed public attention for weeks, there existed a deeper reality, one connected not merely to appearances or schedules, but to the challenges, responsibilities, and pressures that accompany life inside one of the world's most scrutinized institutions. But the rumors themselves were only the surface of a far deeper story, one that stretched back months before the public ever noticed something was wrong. Long before headlines began asking uncomfortable questions, subtle changes had already started appearing behind palace walls. They were easy to miss at first. A cancelled appearance here, a separate engagement there. But inside the royal machine, even the smallest deviations can spark enormous speculation. The reality, according to those who closely followed developments within royal circles, was far more complicated than the rumors suggested. Months before public curiosity reached its peak, both Sophie and Edward were navigating a period of significant transition. Their responsibilities within the monarchy were evolving, their workloads were expanding, and the expectations placed upon them were growing rapidly. To outside observers, the changes appeared unusual. To those familiar with the pressures facing senior working royals, they reflected the demands of an institution adapting to a changing era. Much of that shift reportedly began after Edward assumed his role as Duke of Edinburgh. The title carried enormous symbolic weight, but it also brought new obligations. Suddenly, Edward found himself overseeing a broader range of responsibilities, attending additional engagements, and representing the crown in situations that required increasing amounts of time and attention. What had once been a carefully balanced schedule began expanding in ways few people outside palace walls fully understood. The role was not merely ceremonial. It represented a continuation of a legacy stretching back generations, and with that legacy came expectations that could not easily be ignored. At the same time, Sophie was becoming more visible than ever before on the international stage. Reports suggest that her work continued attracting growing recognition, particularly through diplomatic visits, charitable initiatives, and engagements involving issues of global significance. Her reputation for professionalism and dedication had earned widespread respect, resulting in an increasingly demanding calendar. Invitations multiplied, opportunities expanded, responsibilities grew. Far from stepping back, Sophie appeared to be entering one of the most active periods of her public life. Yet the more their individual responsibilities increased, the more difficult it became to maintain the public rhythm people had grown accustomed to seeing. Joint appearances naturally became less frequent. Separate schedules became more common. Events that once might have featured both Edward and Sophie increasingly required them to be in different locations pursuing different priorities. According to insiders, this reflected logistics rather than personal distance. But from the outside, the distinction was not always obvious. That misunderstanding gradually became the foundation upon which speculation began building. Royal observers noticed the pattern. Commentators discussed it. Journalists examined it. Every separate appearance seemed to generate new questions. Why were they working apart more often? Had something changed behind the scenes? Was there a deeper explanation nobody was willing to discuss? The absence of clear assumptions that often had little connection to reality. According to palace sources, concerns reportedly began emerging about how these narratives were developing. While Sophie and Edward remained focused on fulfilling their duties, the conversation surrounding them was increasingly shifting away from their work and towards speculation about their relationship. The irony was difficult to ignore. Two individuals dedicating enormous effort to public service were finding their accomplishments overshadowed by rumors created largely through misinterpretation. As public curiosity intensified, every engagement seemed to attract additional scrutiny. Separate appearances became evidence. Routine scheduling decisions became theories. Ordinary logistical adjustments became headlines. The story acquired a momentum of its own, one that grew stronger with each passing week. For royal watchers, the mystery appeared to deepen. For those living through it, the reality was often far less dramatic and far more demanding. Yet beneath the rumors and media attention, another challenge was quietly taking shape. One that had little to do with scheduling patterns and far more to do with the pressures facing a modern, royal family attempting to balance duty, responsibility, and personal life under constant public observation. The public believed it was witnessing the story unfold in real time. In truth, it was only seeing the surface. Yet as the public focused on what they could see, an entirely different challenge was unfolding behind the scenes. The House of Windsor has always demanded sacrifice, time, privacy, freedom, sometimes even happiness. And as the monarchy entered one of its most turbulent periods in recent memory, Sophie and Edward found themselves carrying responsibilities few fully understood. By the time speculation surrounding their relationship began dominating headlines, the royal family was already navigating a period of extraordinary pressure. The public saw ceremonies, engagements, and carefully managed appearances. What it did not always see was the enormous strain being placed upon the institution behind the scenes. Questions surrounding the future of the monarchy seemed to emerge from every direction. Expectations grew heavier, responsibilities multiplied, and for senior working royals, the margin for error became increasingly small. According to royal observers, much of this pressure intensified as concerns surrounding King Charles's health created new uncertainty within royal operations. Whenever questions arise regarding the well-being of a reigning monarch, even routine decisions can take on greater significance. Planning becomes more complex, workloads increase, long-term strategies require reassessment. In such circumstances, every senior member of the family is expected to contribute more. Reports suggest that this was precisely the environment Sophie and Edward found themselves navigating. As the institution adjusted to these evolving challenges, senior working royals reportedly faced expanding schedules and growing demands. Duties that might once have been distributed across a wider group increasingly fell upon a smaller number of trusted individuals. The result was a dramatic increase in expectations. Travel intensified, engagements multiplied, commitments stretched across both national and international responsibilities. What appeared from the outside to be separate schedules may have reflected something much simpler: the reality of two people attempting to meet the demands of an institution undergoing a period of transition. Throughout this period, Sophie reportedly emerged as one of the monarchy's most respected and dependable figures. Her reputation for professionalism, discretion, and commitment continued to strengthen. Whether representing the crown abroad or supporting causes close to her heart, she consistently demonstrated the qualities that palace insiders had long admired. As public trust became increasingly valuable, Sophie appeared to become one of the institution's most effective ambassadors. Yet with that trust came additional responsibility. The more reliable she proved herself, the more she was asked to do. Edward faced a similar challenge. According to reports, his responsibilities quietly expanded as he embraced a growing institutional role within the family. Unlike some royals who attract constant media attention, Edward often worked beyond the spotlight. Yet his contributions reportedly became increasingly important during this period. Additional duties, expanded obligations, and growing expectations required both time and focus. While public attention concentrated on rumors, much of Edward's energy appears to have been directed toward ensuring stability within the institution itself. What made the situation particularly difficult was the collision between public expectations and private obligations. Families face challenges under normal circumstances. Royal families face them under constant observation. Every scheduling decision invites analysis. Every appearance generates commentary. Every absence creates questions. For Sophie and Edward, balancing family life, institutional responsibilities, and personal commitments reportedly became increasingly demanding. Yet rather than responding publicly to every rumor, they chose a different path. According to insiders, patience became their strategy. While speculation intensified, they continued focusing on their duties. While headlines multiplied, they remained committed to their responsibilities. The decision was not necessarily easy. Rumors often grow stronger when unanswered. Narratives become harder to correct once established. Yet Sophie and Edward reportedly believed that their work would ultimately speak louder than speculation. For a time, that approach appeared sustainable. But as weeks turned into months, the rumors refused to fade. Instead, they expanded. What had begun as curiosity evolved into widespread discussion. Professional responsibilities were interpreted as personal distance. Institutional pressures became relationship theories. The more they remained silent, the more others attempted to fill that silence with assumptions. And eventually, the situation reached a point where restraint alone could no longer control the narrative. The pressures facing the monarchy, the responsibilities weighing upon Sophie and Edward, and the growing public fascination with their supposed rift were all moving toward an unavoidable collision. But patience has limits, and eventually the speculation reached a point where silence itself became a story. By the time the rumors reached their loudest volume, almost every gesture was being analyzed. Every photograph, every appearance, every perceived absence. The narrative had taken on a life of its own. What had started as scattered speculation was now evolving into something far larger. The story no longer belonged to a handful of royal commentators or dedicated observers. It had spread across newspapers, television discussions, online forums, and social media platforms where every new image seemed to generate another round of theories. The original questions had become increasingly difficult to separate from the assumptions that followed them. And with each passing week, the gap between perception and reality appeared to grow wider. According to those who monitored the situation closely, tabloid narratives became increasingly dramatic. Stories that once focused on scheduling differences began expanding into far more sensational territory. Professional obligations were reinterpreted as personal disputes. Independent engagements became supposed evidence of deeper tensions. Ordinary decisions were transformed into extraordinary conclusions. The more attention the story received, the more elaborate the theories became. What made the situation particularly challenging was that many of these claims relied not on confirmed information, but on the absence of information. Silence became proof. Routine became suspicion. Normality became mystery. At the same time, social media accelerated the process. A single photograph could inspire thousands of comments within hours. A missed appearance could become the subject of endless debate. Every image was scrutinized. Every expression was analyzed. Every public interaction was dissected in extraordinary detail. Supporters and critics alike offered competing interpretations, often reaching completely different conclusions while looking at exactly the same information. The result was a cycle that fed itself. The more discussion occurred, the more attention the story attracted. The more attention it attracted, the more speculation followed. As public fascination intensified, many of Sophie and Edward's loyal supporters reportedly grew increasingly frustrated. For years, the couple had earned a reputation for dedication, consistency, and quiet service. They had avoided controversy, they had focused on duty. Yet suddenly their work seemed overshadowed by rumors they had never publicly addressed. According to royal observers, some supporters began openly calling for clarity. Not because they believed the rumors, but because they worried the rumors were becoming the story itself. Behind the scenes, however, palace officials reportedly remained committed to their traditional approach. The strategy of refusing to comment had long been considered the safest response to speculation. Engaging with every rumor risks giving it additional legitimacy. Ignoring it often allows it to fade naturally. Yet this situation appeared different. Rather than disappearing, the speculation continued growing. Each day without clarification seemed to generate fresh questions. Each unanswered theory created room for another. Sources suggest that Sophie and Edward were fully aware of the growing narrative surrounding them. According to insiders, they monitored developments carefully, while continuing to prioritize their official responsibilities. The challenge was not simply dealing with public curiosity. It was deciding whether responding would actually improve the situation. For individuals accustomed to working quietly and avoiding unnecessary publicity, the decision carried considerable weight. Speaking out would attract attention. Remaining silent would allow speculation to continue. Neither option appeared entirely comfortable. As the weeks passed, reports suggest that private discussions increasingly focused on one question. Had the situation reached a point where silence was causing more harm than good? The answer was not immediately obvious, yet the pressure continued building. Rumors grew louder. Headlines became more persistent. Public curiosity showed no sign of fading. Gradually, according to those familiar with the matter, a realization began taking shape. The narrative surrounding Sophie and Edward had become too large to ignore indefinitely. For months, patience had been their strategy. Professionalism had been their response. Silence had been their shield. But even the strongest shields eventually face limits. And as speculation reached unprecedented levels, the possibility of addressing the situation directly reportedly became increasingly difficult to avoid. And when that decision finally came, it would reveal a truth far different from the one many had imagined. When Sophie and Edward finally addressed the speculation, they did not do so with outrage, defensiveness, or dramatic declarations. Instead, they responded in a manner that reflected decades of royal service calmly, deliberately, and with unmistakable confidence. After months of rumors, theories, and relentless scrutiny, many expected a dramatic confrontation with the narrative that had surrounded them. Some anticipated a strongly worded denial. Others expected carefully crafted statements designed to silence critics once and for all. Yet according to royal observers, Sophie and Edward chose a very different path. Rather than engaging directly with every rumor, they allowed their actions to tell the story. And in doing so, they began dismantling months of speculation more effectively than any public rebuttal ever could. Reports suggest that the turning point came during a significant public engagement where the couple appeared together after an extended period of separate commitments. For those who had spent months analyzing schedules and searching for signs of tension, the appearance immediately attracted attention. Yet what mattered most was not the event itself. It was the unmistakable sense of unity it conveyed. According to observers, there was no attempt to stage a dramatic response, no effort to create headlines. Instead, there was something far more powerful, an effortless demonstration of familiarity, partnership, and mutual confidence that directly challenged the assumptions many had spent months promoting. Almost immediately, the conversation began changing. The focus gradually shifted away from rumors and back toward the work that had been overshadowed by them. Discussions that once centered on supposed personal divisions now increasingly highlighted the couple's shared commitment to duty. The contrast was striking. For months, speculation had attempted to define the narrative. Now the narrative was being reclaimed through service, consistency, and presence. Royal commentators were quick to notice the significance. Many pointed out that strong partnerships are rarely measured by constant public appearances. They are measured by trust, support, and the ability to navigate demanding circumstances together. According to those familiar with the pressures facing senior royals, Sophie and Edward had spent months balancing expanding responsibilities while continuing to fulfill their obligations to the crown. What some interpreted as distance now appeared far more likely to have been the result of two individuals managing increasingly demanding workloads. As public perception shifted, another reality became impossible to ignore. Their response highlighted a quality that had long defined their relationship: mutual respect. Throughout years of royal service, both had developed distinct roles, separate responsibilities, and individual areas of focus. Yet rather than weakening their partnership, those differences appeared to strengthen it. Each supported the other's work. Each contributed to a broader shared mission. The rumors had assumed separation meant division. Their actions suggested something entirely different. Great royal partnerships are rarely defined by moments of comfort. They are defined by periods of pressure. And few couples have navigated changing expectations, public scrutiny, and institutional responsibility with greater consistency than Sophie and Edward. Their decades-long relationship provided context that many rumors failed to acknowledge. Over the years, they had weathered changing public expectations, institutional transitions, and the unique pressures that accompany life inside the royal family. Challenges had come and gone. Responsibilities had evolved. Yet their commitment to service remained constant. That consistency became one of the defining lessons of the entire episode. According to royal observers, the experience ultimately strengthened rather than weakened their public standing. As speculation faded, respect grew. Supporters who had followed their work for years felt vindicated. Others gained a renewed appreciation for the resilience required to navigate royal life under constant scrutiny. More importantly, Sophie and Edward emerged with an even more significant role within the modern monarchy. Their reliability, professionalism, and dedication became increasingly valuable during a period of broader institutional change. What began as a story about a rumored rift ultimately became a story about endurance. It became a reminder that appearances can be misleading, that public narratives are not always accurate, and that true partnerships are often revealed not during easy moments, but during difficult ones. Through patience, trust, and shared purpose, Sophie and Edward emerged stronger than before. But what surprised many observers most was not what they said, it was what their actions revealed. Yet the most important lesson from this episode was still to come. The real story was never about a feud. It was never about division. It was about perception, how quickly assumptions can become accepted narratives when silence leaves room for speculation to flourish. Looking back on the controversy, what stands out most is not the rumor itself, but the speed with which it grew. A handful of observations became theories. Theories became headlines. Headlines became accepted truths in the minds of many who had never seen evidence supporting them. In an era where information travels faster than ever before, the line between possibility and certainty can sometimes disappear with alarming speed. What began as questions about separate appearances gradually evolved into a narrative of conflict, even though the facts available to the public remained remarkably limited. The story became larger than the evidence, and once that happened, controlling it became almost impossible. For Sophie and Edward, the experience served as a powerful reminder of the unique challenges faced by modern royals. Every decision is observed, every absence is noticed, every routine adjustment carries the potential to generate speculation. The public's fascination with the royal family has always existed, but today's digital landscape amplifies that fascination in ways previous generations could never have imagined. A missed engagement no longer remains a minor scheduling change. It becomes a topic of global discussion. A separate appearance no longer passes unnoticed. It becomes a clue in a mystery that may never have existed in the first place. Throughout the ordeal, Sophie and Edward chose restraint over reaction. At the time, that decision was interpreted by some as confirmation that something was wrong. Yet, as events unfolded, it became increasingly clear that their silence had not been an admission. It had been a reflection of the values that had guided their public lives for decades. They understood that responding to every rumor would only encourage more rumors. They believed that service mattered more than speculation. And ultimately, their actions proved stronger than the stories being written about them. As public attention gradually shifted away from controversy and back toward their work, perceptions began changing. Observers who had once focused on rumors started recognizing the consistency that had defined the couple's public lives. Their commitment to duty had not changed. Their support for one another had not disappeared. Their dedication to the institution remained as strong as ever. The supposed crisis that had dominated discussions for months began fading under the weight of a much simpler reality. The partnership many believed was under strain had remained remarkably steady throughout the entire period. In the end, there was no explosive confession, no dramatic palace showdown, no shocking revelation hidden behind locked doors. Instead, there was something far more powerful, a demonstration of quiet strength in an age obsessed with spectacle. As the months passed, The speculation gradually lost momentum. New headlines emerged. New stories captured public attention. Yet Sophie and Edward continued doing exactly what they had always done. They carried out engagements, supported charities, represented the crown, fulfilled their responsibilities with the same steady professionalism that had earned respect throughout their years of service. If anything, the episode appeared to strengthen their reputation. Supporters viewed them with renewed admiration. Their ability to withstand intense scrutiny without abandoning their principles became a story in itself. Perhaps that is why this chapter ultimately became a story of resilience rather than division. It revealed the strength that exists beneath public appearances. It highlighted the importance of trust, patience, and perspective. And it demonstrated that while rumors can dominate conversations for a time, they rarely define reality forever. And as the dust finally settled, one final chapter remained to be written. Because while rumors may dominate headlines for a season, it is steadfast duty, enduring partnership, and quiet loyalty that ultimately leave the deepest mark on royal history. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.